Inside the testing hall, the sound of constant chewing and swallowing fills the air as the examiner Bahari continues his massive feast. A mountain of bones from the roasted pigs piles up on the floor behind him. Bahari pats his incredibly distended stomach, letting out a satisfied breath. With a wide grin, he declares that he is finally stuffed after the meal. Menchi strikes a large gong to signal the end of the first part of the second phase. The story continues with Chapter 11, titled The Inevitable Outcome. Bahari sits before a massive heap of skeletons, having personally consumed 70 roast pigs while the applicants look on in shock. Gon and Killua observe the scene, with Gon remarking on the amazing nature of hunters and Bahari's capacity for food. Lirio and Kurapika are baffled, struggling to understand the physics of how one man could hold that much meat. Menchi scolds Bahari for being a glutton and not properly judging the quality of the food. Though Bahari notes the field has been narrowed down regardless, Menchi sighs and dismisses Bahari's lack of standards, spinning her mallet with a bored expression. She stands ready to take over the next portion of the exam, emphasizing that gourmet hunters should have discerning tastes. The announcement is made. 70 applicants have successfully passed the roast pig round. High above on a tree branch, Hisoka watches the proceedings, noting that 70 survivors is a decent number. He muses that while the physical task was simple, it required a high level of athleticism and decision-making. Hisoka focuses his attention on Menchi, knowing she is far more difficult to satisfy than Bahari was. Menchi is revealed to be a world-class chef and a single-star hunter at only 21 years old, possessing a legendary palate. She warns the remaining applicants that she is going to be an extremely harsh critic. Menchi prepares to reveal the dish for the second part of the phase. With an energetic flourish, she announces that the required dish is sushi. The group of applicants stares back at her with looks of total confusion. Kurapika looks thoughtful, trying to search his memory for the term. Gon blinks at bewilderment, completely unfamiliar with the word. Lirio remains silent, sweat dropping as he realizes he has no idea what he is supposed to cook. The crowd erupts into shouts, asking what on earth sushi is supposed to be. Even the most experienced-looking applicants admit they are completely in the dark. The candidates murmur amongst themselves, frustrated that they are being asked to make something they have never heard of. Menchi explains that sushi is a traditional dish from a small island country, which explains their lack of knowledge. She reveals a vast room filled with fully equipped individual sushi cooking stations. She points out the professional tools and the sinks provided at each station. She highlights that the most important ingredient, the rice, is already cooked and waiting in traditional wooden tubs. She adds a specific detail. She is partial to nigiri sushi, which must be hand-molded. She orders the 70 participants to their stations, stating the test ends only when she is full. The applicants stand at their counters, repeating the word nigiri as they try to puzzle out what it means. One applicant looks at the rice, unsure if he should be doing something with his hands or the tools. Several others look at the knives provided, trying to deduce what kind of protein or vegetable would be appropriate. Gon and Killua discuss if it might be similar to rice balls, though Killua notes the specific knife suggests something more complex. The applicant Hanzo giggles to himself, casting a shadow over the others who are panicking. Hanzo realizes he is in luck, as he's from the very country Menchi was describing. He quickly hides his joy, deciding to pretend he is struggling so the other applicants won't catch on and copy him. Lirio glances over at Hanzo, noticing the bald man's suspicious behavior while he tries to handle the rice. Hanzo lets out a muffled snort, trying to keep a straight face as he watches the others fail. Lirio and several other applicants instantly realize that Hanzo knows the secret to the dish. Kurapika and Lirio analyze the clues, hand-molded shapes, and specialized knives. Kurapika recalls seeing information about this specific culinary art in a book. He explains to Lirio that it involves rice mixed with vinegar and combined with raw fish. Lirio shouts in surprise about finding fish in a forest, but Kurapika quickly hits him and reminds him that forests have rivers and ponds. The word fish echoes through the room, and suddenly everyone realizes what they need to do. Kurapika is annoyed at Lirio's loud mouth, as the other applicants have now overheard their discovery. Hanzo is horrified to see that his advantage has been lost because everyone is now catching on. A massive stampede begins as the applicants rush out toward the nearby water sources. The applicants reach a serene lake and begin their search for the main ingredient. People scramble over rocks and riverbeds, desperately trying to catch anything that swims. One applicant prepares a spear to hunt for fish from the shore. Another man uses a small hand net to scoop up his prize. Some applicants even dive directly into the water, chasing fish with knives in hand. The river is filled with chaos as hunters use their physical skills to secure their ingredients. Men run back toward the kitchen stations, triumphantly holding their freshly caught fish. Back in the hall, the sound of rhythmic knifework fills the air as everyone begins prepping. Applicants slam their caught fish onto the cutting boards with varying degrees of skill. Buhari laughs at the sight, telling Menchi that she's being mean by making them do this. Menchi notes that proper sushi requires seafood, but since they only have access to freshwater fish, the results will be varied. She admits that this limitation makes the test more interesting for her. Menchi admits that she identifies more as a chef than an examiner and is genuinely curious about what they will create. Buhari looks a bit worried, wondering if her perfectionist chef side will interfere with the exam process. Buhari watches her carefully, sensing that Menchi is about to get very critical. Laerio starts molding his rice, determined to create something impressive. He focuses on the three key components: raw fish, vinegar, and hand-malted rice. Leorio convinces himself he is a culinary genius as he works with speed. He confidently walks up to Menchi's table with a covered silver platter, boasting about his original recipe. He presents his creation as the Leorio special and tells her to eat up. Menchi reaches out and lifts the cover of the platter. Inside is a chaotic mess of rice with several whole, small fish stuck into it at odd angles, some still twitching. Menchi is furious, tossing the plate into the air and shouting that he must be joking. Leorio tries to argue with her critique, but she yells at him to get back to his station immediately. She emphasizes that for nigiri sushi, the specific shape is essential and cannot be ignored. Leorio walks away dejected, and Gon decides it is his turn to show his work. Gon's dish is equally unappealing, featuring a single fishtail sticking out of a ball of rice. Menchi rejects Gon's dish just as violently, asking if he took lessons from Leorio. Gon is depressed to be compared to Leorio, while Kurapika watches them with a worried expression. The rejections continue as Menchi yells at the next applicant. She rejects another dish, calling it completely wrong. A third applicant presents an onigiri rice ball, which she rejects for being the wrong type of Japanese food. Menchi screams at the applicants, accusing them of trying to starve her with their incompetence. She grumbles to herself about how dense the group is, despite the hints she thinks she has provided. Kurapika observes the examiner silently, deep in thought. He realizes that as an examiner, there must be a logical way to deduce the requirements of the test. He focuses on the word shape and its relation to making many pieces quickly, searching for a consistent formula. He notices Menchi is holding 2 sticks chopsticks and has a small dish of condiment on her table. He deduces that if she uses sticks to dip the sushi, each piece must be small and bite-sized. A look of realization washes over Kurapika's face as he finally understands the required proportions. Another failed dish sits on a plate, with the fishtail still twitching. Menchi continues her yelling, comparing the new attempts to Leorio's poor standards. Leorio is offended that his name has become the benchmark for failure. Menchi rants about the applicant's lack of style, observation skills, and imagination. Hanzo approaches the table, chuckling as he claims that not everyone is hopeless. He presents a plate with a single, perfectly shaped piece of actual sushi. Menchi is momentarily silenced, looking at the dish and admitting that it finally looks correct. Menchi picks up the sushi with her chopsticks and takes a bite, chewing slowly. Hanzo waits confidently for her approval. Suddenly, she declares it is no good and tells him to try again, shocking the ninja. Hanzo complains, claiming that sushi is simple and should taste the same no matter who makes it. The other applicants overhear this and realize that sushi is just rice, wasabi, and fish. Menchi's aura darkens as she listens to Hanzo belittle the craft. She explodes in rage, shouting that it takes 10 years of training to even begin making proper sushi. Hanzo argues back, asking what chance they have if she expects master-level results. Buhari sighs, seeing that Menchi has completely lost her cool. Buhari notes that once Menchi gets worked up, she loses all perspective and her standards become impossible. Hungry and angry, Menchi demands the next challenger step forward immediately. A crowd of applicants rushes the table at once, all trying to present their sushi. Menchi is annoyed that everyone now knows the basic structure, so she must now judge purely by taste. She begins a rapid-fire tasting session, sampling dish after dish. She rejects a piece because the rice doesn't fall apart correctly on the tongue. The applicants complain that she is being too picky, but she snaps back that she knows what she likes. A montage shows Menchi screaming various technical critiques about fish grain, thumbprints in the rice, and body heat transfer. She continues to drink tea between bites to cleanse her palate, looking more and more frustrated. Finally, she lets out a long, exhausted sigh. Menchi announces that she is full and that not a single applicant has passed. The total count for the round is 0. The next segment begins. Chapter 12. The chairman arrives. Back at the testing site, Menchi refuses to listen to reason, shouting that she won't redo the test. Bahari questions if she truly adhered to the established criteria of the exam. Menchi argues that the criteria allowed her to judge based on her personal taste as a gourmet hunter. Bahari tries to explain that the test was also meant to measure how they handled her hints, but she tells him to stay out of it. She points out that Hanzo spoiled the raw fish secret to the rest, which threw the intended challenge off balance. Menchi remains defiant, insisting that the disruption isn't a valid reason to restart. Menchi stands firm in the messy kitchen, declaring with finality that everyone has failed the second phase. The applicants mutter in disbelief, realizing she is completely serious about ending their journey right there. The candidates are outraged, calling the sudden end to the exam ridiculous. Gon and Killua look stunned by the development, as the tension in the room reaches a breaking point. Miles away, the city rests peacefully by the water. The scene shifts to a modern building, likely the Hunter Association headquarters. A door labeled 1209 is shown. Inside, a man on the phone comments on how headstrong Menchi is. The man looks surprised as the line goes dead with a buzzing sound. He turns to an elderly man, Chairman Nitro, informing him that Menchi has shut off her phone. Nitro agrees that once Menchi makes up her mind, she is unlikely to budge. The assistant notes that the irregularities of this year's exam are becoming impossible to ignore. Nitro stands up, stating they cannot settle the matter from their current location. The assistant apologizes for the trouble, but Nitro dismisses it as part of his job as chairman. Nitro comments that hunters are often stubborn and nitpicky by nature. He notes that while they have had 0 pass use before, he feels somewhat sorry for the current group of applicants. A Hunter Association blimp hums as it flies across the sky toward the exam site. Back at the exam site, a loud smash occurs as someone vents their frustration. Applicant 255, a large man named Todo, stands over a destroyed station with a clenched fist. Menchi and Bahari look at him, with Menchi appearing unimpressed by his outburst. Todo shouts that he has had enough and doesn't care if she hates their sushi. He yells that he came here to be a blacklist hunter, not to mess with fish and rice, calling the test gourmet crap. Menchi calmly tells him she is sorry to hear that he feels that way. She mockingly suggests he have better luck next year, since gourmet crap is the rule for this round. Todo's face turns red with rage as he prepares to charge at her. He lunges forward, shouting at her not to mess with them. Before he can reach Menchi, Bahari moves with surprising speed, swinging his massive hand. Todo is sent flying through the air by the force of the strike. The applicant crashes through the glass windows of the building and tumbles outside. He hits the ground hard, completely incapacitated. Todo lies face down in the dirt, groaning and bleeding as the other applicants look on in horror. Menchi turns to Bahari, telling him that his intervention was uncalled for. Bahari disagrees, noting that if he hadn't stepped in, Menchi likely would have killed the man. Menchi shrugs, admitting that he might be right as she twirls her knives. She mocks Todo's ambition to be a blacklist hunter, reminding the crowd that regardless of their specialty, all hunters must be proficient in martial arts. She explains that gourmet hunters often have to travel to inhospitable places and fight off dangerous poachers. She tells the group that a hunter must have the desire to challenge the unknown, which is what she is looking for in them. A mysterious voice from above asks if failing everyone is a bit too abrupt. The applicants look up into the sky, noticing a large shadow passing over them. They recognize the Hunter Association logo on the side of a massive blimp. The blimp hovers directly over the testing site. The applicants gasp as they see a figure leap out from the vessel. A man descends rapidly from the sky, plummeting hundreds of feet toward the ground. Nituro lands softly on one wooden sandal, creating a small shockwave that kicks up dust. Larayo is stunned, marveling that the geezer just survived a 60-foot drop. Menchi identifies him as Chairman Nituro, the head of the exam commission. The applicants watch in awe as the legendary figure stands before them. Nituro explains that he usually leaves things to the examiners unless a situation becomes too tangled. He addresses Menchi directly, and she responds with immediate respect. The applicants note that Menchi is suddenly being very polite compared to her earlier behavior. Nituro asks her if she failed them for a lack of desire to challenge the unknown, while having a stray thought about her appearance. Menchi looks down, admitting that wasn't the sole reason for her decision. She confesses that she got angry when an applicant insulted her profession and lost her appetite once the secret of the dish was leaked. Nituro asks if her emotional state inhibited her ability to make a fair and sober evaluation. Menchi admits she failed as an examiner by letting her emotions regarding cooking take over. She offers to resign her position and withdraw her decision to fail everyone. Nituro ponders, noting that simply continuing the current test would compromise the integrity of the results. Instead, he asks Menchi to stay on as the examiner for a new test. He adds a condition: she must participate in the new test herself to set an example for the applicants. Menchi looks surprised by the proposal. The applicants realize that seeing the examiner perform the task will prove it is actually possible. Todo, still bruised and angry, vows not to forget the humiliation he suffered. Menchi accepts the chairman's terms and begins thinking of a new challenge. She suggests a new task: boiling eggs. The applicants are confused by such a simple-sounding request. Menchi asks the chairman for a lift to Split Mountain. Nituro smiles and agrees to take them all there on his blimp. The blimp lifts off from the testing grounds. The massive airship heads toward a distant, uniquely shaped peak. Menchi stands at the edge of the blimp's open cargo bay as they arrive. The applicants peer over the edge, feeling a sense of dread. They see a terrifyingly deep ravine splitting the mountain apart. Menchi tells them not to worry about the fall, mentioning a fast river at the bottom that leads to the sea. With a casual farewell, she leaps backward off the blimp and into the abyss. Menchi dives headfirst into the ravine while explaining that spider eagles live on the mountain. She plummets toward the darkness below. The applicants watch her descent with total disbelief. Nituro explains that she is diving to retrieve one of the bird's eggs. Menchi reaches a network of webs spun across the ravine, where clusters of eggs hang safely away from land predators. She grabs onto a sturdy web strand, stopping her fall instantly. Hanging over the rushing river below, she swings with practiced ease. She reaches out and carefully collects one of the large eggs. Using her incredible strength, she begins climbing back up the vertical rock face. Menchi pulls herself back onto the blimp, holding her prize and telling them the next step is to boil it. Todo is sweat-dropping, thinking she makes an impossible task look far too easy. Gon and Killua are thrilled by the challenge, finding it to be a perfect test. Leorio agrees, preferring a dangerous physical task over the complexity of cooking. With a shout of excitement, the applicants prepare to jump. A group of applicants, led by Gon, Killua, and Leorio, leaps into the ravine together. Menchi stands at the top, watching as only a portion of the applicants have the courage to follow. A large pot of water simmers over a fire as those who retrieved eggs begin cooking them. Menchi holds up a normal chicken egg and a spider eagle egg, inviting the applicants to taste the difference. Todo and several other applicants take a bite of the hard-boiled spider eagle egg. The flavor hits them with an intensity they didn't expect. Todo is stunned, admitting it is the most delicious thing he's ever eaten, describing its creamy texture. Menchi smiles, explaining that gourmet hunters live for the treasure of such incredible flavors. Don offers a piece of his egg to Todo, who looks humble and slightly embarrassed. Todo chews the food, realizing how wrong he was to look down on the profession. He admits he is sold on the value of gourmet hunting and vows to return next year as a better man. Menchi watches him with a satisfied smirk. The final results are announced for the revised second phase. 42 applicants have officially passed. A close-up of Gon marks the beginning of a new chapter titled A Game at Midnight. The Hunter exam airship cruises through a vast, starry night sky. Inside, an elderly man with a topknot stands before the remaining examinees and formally introduces himself as Nituro, the chairman of the selection committee. Nitro explains that he usually doesn't appear until the final stage, but the atmosphere this year drew him out early. The examinees listen intently, their faces etched with the fatigue of the previous trials. The group remains silent, processing the presence of the powerful chairman. Hisoka watches with a faint, knowing smirk, seemingly unfazed by the high-ranking official. Nitro chuckles to himself, clearly enjoying the edgy and tense mood aboard the ship. The examiner's assistant, Beans, informs the group that they will reach their destination at 8 a.m. tomorrow and encourages them to use the time to rest. While the adults are drained, Killua and Gon are still full of energy and decide to go explore the airship. Lorario and Kurapika watch them go, exhausted and only interested in finding a place to sleep after a very long day. As they walk away, the remaining examinees begin to wonder exactly how many phases are left in the exam. Leorio and Kurapika discuss the uncertainty of the exam's length. They are joined by others who note that the Hunter exam is different every year. An experienced applicant points out that while the number of phases varies, it typically averages around 5 or 6. Leorio realizes with a sweat that they aren't even halfway through the ordeal yet. Tonpa chimes in with a warning, suggesting that the next test could be sprung on them at any moment, even before they land. He advises them not to let their guard down if they truly want to pass. Leorio and Kurapika fall silent, looking even more stressed than before. Tonpa smirks to himself, satisfied that his psychological manipulation will keep his rivals too nervous to actually rest. Examinees are scattered throughout the lounge, some drinking and others brooding in silence. One applicant sits alone with his spear, while Gitaracker remains eerily still in the corner. Over a meal, the examiners begin to discuss the potential of this year's crop of candidates. Bahara eats while listening to the others debate who has the best chance of passing. Menchi notes that while many failed her test, there are few applicants with exceptionally powerful auras. She asks Satats for his professional opinion on the group. Satats admits he is impressed with several of the rookies this year. They specifically mention number 294, Anzo, noting his sharp skills and surprising knowledge of sushi. Satats points out that Killua is a favorite, though Menchi finds the boy's personality a bit obnoxious. Bahara shifts the conversation to number 44, Hisoka, who is not a rookie but stands out regardless. Buhara pauses mid-bite, his expression becoming serious as he recalls Hisoka's presence. He explains that earlier, Hisoka exuded a cold and incredibly intense bloodlust. Menchi nods, confirming that she felt the subtle threat as well. She observed that Hisoka seemed to be barely containing his urge to strike since the moment the examiners arrived. Bahura listens as Satats continues the evaluation. Satats remarks that the constant undercurrent of provocation from number 44 made even him feel edgy. He agrees that Hisoka bears watching throughout the remainder of the exam. Satats believes Hisoka's talent is equal to that of a professional hunter, though he prefers to operate from the shadows. He reflects on how the exam is a rare opportunity for hunters to find worthy opponents who share the same drive. The examiner views Hisoka as an anomaly who uses the exam as just one more way to seek satisfaction. Elsewhere on the ship, Hisoka stares ahead with an intense, predatory gaze. Hisoka sits alone on the floor, passing the time by carefully building a tall tower out of playing cards. He reaches out a single finger toward the structure. With a light tap, the entire card tower collapses into a heap. Hisoka closes his eyes and smiles to himself, as if savoring a dark thought. He lets out a low, chilling laugh that unnerves two other applicants nearby. As they gaze out, Gon suddenly asks Killua about his parents. Killua casually looks back and says he's pretty sure they are both still alive. When Gon asks what they do for a living, Killua bluntly answers that they are mass murderers. Gon is taken aback, asking if he means both of them. Killua stares at him blankly for a moment. Killua bursts into laughter, telling Gon he's a riot for looking so shocked. Gon smiles, thinking it was a joke, but then realizes that Killua might actually be telling the truth. Killua's expression shifts back to a serious look. He asks Gon if he really believes him, and Gon confirms that he does. Killua finds it interesting that Gon can see through his cute kid act, which he uses to keep people guessing. He explains that assassination is the family trade and that everyone in his household is trained for it. His family considers him a prodigy, but Killua resents the pressure to live up to their murderous expectations. He recalls how his mother cried when he told him he would decide his own future, claiming he was throwing his life away. Things turned violent. Killua slashed his mother's face and stabbed his older brother before running away from home. He cheerfully tells Gon that once he gets his license, he plans to hunt down his own family and collect the bounties on their heads. Meanwhile, Chairman Nitro walks through a quiet corridor of the airship. Nitro spots the two boys sitting by the window in the distance. Killua senses a presence and begins to look around. Nitro remains out of sight, watching them from the shadows. The chairman's gaze is sharp as he observes the two youngest examinees. In an instant, his eyes flash with an intense, overwhelming power. Both Gon and Killua whip their heads around, alerted by the sudden surge of energy. They stare into the empty hallway, their senses on high alert. The boys stand up and look down the corridor, but no one is there. Suddenly, Nitro approaches from the opposite direction, casually asking the boys what they are up to. He walks toward them with a calm, unassuming smile. Killua and Gon are confused by his sudden appearance. Killua asks if he saw anyone else down the hall, but Nitro denies seeing anyone. Killua narrows his eyes, suspicious of the old man's movement. He remarks that the old-timer is incredibly fast. Nitro plays it off, claiming he was just taking a slow stroll through the ship. An electric tension crackles between Killua and the chairman. Killua bluntly asks what Nitro's game is, and if he's just trying to kill time before the next phase. Nitro chuckles, admitting that he is indeed just passing the time. The chairman looks down at them and asks for their honest opinion on the exam so far. Gon thinks it's fun and full of action, but Killua finds it to be a boring letdown. Killua asks if there is any chance the exam will get more challenging, and Nitro gives a vague, "We'll see." Killua interprets that as a no and starts to walk away. But Nitro stops them. Nitro surprises them by asking if they would like to play a quick game. The stakes are high. If the two of them can win against him, he will issue their hunter licenses on the spot. Both boys react with shock at the sudden opportunity to skip the rest of the exam. Nitro bounces a ball, the rhythmic sound echoing in the room. He balances the ball on his head, explaining the simple objective. The rules are easy. Take the ball away from him before the ship lands. They can use any tactics, but he will only defend. Killua steps forward first, confident that he can simply snatch the ball away. Nitro invites him to try, still balancing the ball on his finger. Killua prepares himself, his gaze sharpening as he focuses on his target. He begins to move his feet in a blurring, high-speed motion. Killua's speed is so great that he creates multiple after-images of himself. Gon and Nitro watch as a dozen Killias appear to encircle the chairman. Nitro recognizes this as the rhythm echo, an advanced assassination art that uses a specific cadence to entrance the enemy. Gon is amazed, unable to understand how his friend is creating so many clones. Killua moves silently within the group of after images, searching for an opening. He lunges forward for the ball, but Nitro shifts slightly, causing Killua to miss. The two begin a high-speed exchange, with Nitro performing acrobatic dodges to keep the ball out of reach. Killua realizes he can't even touch the old man, who is far more agile than he looks. Nitro continues to toy with him, hopping around on one leg while keeping the ball balanced. Frustrated, Killua decides to change his approach. He drops low to the ground and attempts a powerful undercut kick to Nitro's standing leg. The kick connects with a violent force against Nitro's shin. Killua grits his teeth in pain as the impact rattles his entire body. Killua pulls back, his foot throbbing from the collision. Nitro looks down, completely unharmed by the strike. Despite the pain, Killua forces a smile, refusing to show weakness. Killua hops away, admitting that Nitro's leg felt like an iron post. Gon decides it's his turn to try. Gon charges forward with incredible speed, determined to succeed where Killua failed. Nitro acknowledges the boy's impressive momentum, but thinks the head-on charge is foolish. The chairman prepares to dodge, certain that the boy's strategy is too simple. Suddenly, Gon uses his momentum to launch himself high into the air. Gon jumps so high that he slams his head directly into the gym ceiling. He falls back to the floor with a heavy thump, clutching his bruised head in agony. Killua yells at him, pointing out that his jump was pointless if he didn't gauge the height of the room. Killua notices that Gon's unexpected move actually caught the chairman off guard for a split second. Nitro realizes that while Gon is immature, the boy possesses a sharp instinct and a sound brain. The chairman smiles, pleased to have found such interesting playmates. In the background, Leariel and Kurapika are fast asleep, completely ignoring the commotion. The wall clock shows that time is ticking away as the game continues deep into the night. Killua's discarded jacket lies on the floor, a sign of how intense the struggle has become. The boys are drenched in sweat and gasping for breath from the non-stop exertion. They stare at Nitro, who is still bouncing the ball with ease, looking as if he hasn't broken a sweat. Nitro calls the individual attempts boring and challenges them to both attack him at the same time. Killua grits his teeth, his frustration reaching a boiling point. Gon readies himself, determined to give everything he has in this final coordinated effort. The airship continues its flight through the dark, silent sky. The second part of the midnight game begins as the boys launch their joint assault. The clock hands continue to move, marking the passage of hours in their struggle. A bright light illuminates the room as the action intensifies. Killua is annoyed that Nitro is still cool as a cucumber while they are sweating like pigs. Gon realizes that even with their combined efforts, they are completely stymied by the chairman's defense. They have tried every standard tactic they know, but nothing has even come close to working. Nitro dodges a kick from Gon, commenting that their attacks are still lacking. The chairman performs a graceful hop over another strike. Gon's attack misses again, hitting the floor with a heavy thud. Nitro stands his ground as Gon suddenly swings his boot toward him. The chairman calls him a cheater for using his boot as a projectile. While Netoro is momentarily distracted by the flying boot, Killua drops down from above. Killua delivers a powerful strike, catching Nitro off balance. The impact of the blow is strong enough to finally create an opening. Killua reaches out his hands, convinced that he finally has a chance to grab the ball. Nitro is genuinely surprised by the clever coordination of the two boys. He manages to perform a mid-air flip, narrowly keeping the ball away from Killua's grasp. Killua curses his luck as the ball stays just out of his reach. The ball bounces away and all three of them scramble to reach it first. Nitro reaches out, confidently telling the ball to come to Papa, but before he can touch it, the ball is struck by sudden swift force. Killua and Gon use their combined momentum to knock the ball toward their side. An angry Nitro calls them little vipers as he loses control of the ball. Gon and Killua dive toward the loose ball, shouting in triumph that it's finally theirs. Nitro lets out a sharp huff, his expression turning serious. With an explosive burst of speed, the chairman lunges toward the ball. The boys are stunned as Nitro becomes a blur of motion before their eyes. He moves so quickly that they can barely process what is happening. Nitro zips past them, a sonic boom echoing in his wake. Before they can even react, the chairman is already ahead of them, ball safely in hand. Nitro slides across the floor, coming to a sudden stop with the ball tucked under his arm. Killua catches his breath, staring at the chairman in disbelief. Gon sits on the floor, panting and processing the old man's overwhelming power. Nitro gives them an A for effort, acknowledging that they actually made him move for a moment. Gon remains silent, his face dripping with sweat and exhaustion. A close-up shows Killua's fist clenched so hard that the floor beneath him cracks. Killua stands with his back to the others, his head bowed. The sweat drips from his brow as he realizes the sheer gap in their abilities. Killua finally gives up, admitting that Nitro has won the game. Gon is surprised and asks why he's quitting, since they were so close that last time. Killua scoffs, asking if Gon truly believes they had a chance. He points out that Nitro hasn't even used his right hand or his left leg the entire time. Gon is shocked by this revelation, realizing just how much the chairman was holding back. Nitro chuckles, admitting he tried not to make it too obvious. Killua is frustrated, feeling like they were nothing more than a joke to the old man. Killua tells Gon to come on, but Gon stubbornly decides to keep trying. Killua looks at his friend, unable to understand his persistent optimism. Killua calls Gon's decision pointless and stupid, but Gon just smiles and agrees. Killua is confused by Gon's carefree attitude. Gon says there's still plenty of time left to reach his own goal, making Nitro use his right hand. Nitro watches the exchange with a curious expression. Killua sighs and gives in, letting Gon have his fun. He tells Gon to enjoy himself while he goes off to finally get some sleep. The door slams shut as Killua leaves the room, leaving Gon alone with the chairman. Gon asks Nitaro about the technique Killua used earlier. He wants to know more about the slow-moving Mani-Kalua's trick. Nitaro looks at him thoughtfully before answering. He explains that it's an advanced technique used by outlaws and isn't something a nice kid like Gon should learn. Nitaro admits the technique was impressive and that Killua has clearly mastered it. Gon beams with pride, stating simply that Killua is an amazing guy. Gon immediately lunges for the ball again, trying to catch Nitaro off guard. Nitaro effortlessly lifts the ball away, telling Gon it was a nice try. The chairman dribbles the ball between his legs, admitting that Gon's attempt was worth a shot. Meanwhile, Killua walks down the hall fuming with frustration over his inability to beat the old man. He looks down, his face shadowed by a dark, intense mood. Killua accidentally bumps into two larger examinees as he walks through the corridor. The men are disgusted by the sweaty kid and demand that he show some manners. They grab for Killua, but he moves with a speed that is invisible to the naked eye. A splash of blood hits the wall as Killua strikes with lethal precision. Killua realizes that if he had kept playing the game, his desire for the ball would have driven him to try and kill the chairman. Back in the gym, Gon continues his tireless pursuit, jumping all over the walls to find an angle. Nitaro continues to dodge with ease, effortlessly keeping the ball away from Gon's reaches. Gon uses his speed to create his own afterimages, surprising the chairman with his mimicry. Nitaro watches closely, his eyes following every version of the boy. The chairman remains focused, refusing to be tricked by the visual echoes. Gon grits his teeth, pushing his body to the absolute limit. He executes a sudden, sharp movement to close the distance. Nitaro prepares for the impact, recognizing that a significant strike is coming. Gon launches himself at Nitaro with everything he has left. It's a clever feint. Gon looks like he's going for the ball, but pivots his aim mid-air. Instead of the ball, Gon slants his head directly into Nitaro's stomach with a violent force. The impact is so strong that even the chairman wobbles, nearly losing his balance. Gon is sent flying back, his head throbbing from the collision with Nitaro's hard muscles. Nitaro realizes that if he doesn't dodge the next one, Gon might actually split his own head open against his tensed muscles. Gon charges again, launching himself like a projectile toward the old man. Nitaro is forced to dodge at the last second, accidentally dropping the ball in the process. He watches as Gon crashes into the far wall with a heavy bonk. Gon sits up, a huge grin on his face despite the injury. He points at Nitaro and triumphantly shouts that the chairman used his right hand to catch himself. Nitaro looks at his own hand and chuckles, admitting that he did indeed use it. Gon celebrates his minor victory with a loud cheer, thrilled that he reached his personal goal. Nitaro watches as the boy falls back onto the floor, exhausted but completely happy. Within seconds, Gon is fast asleep, his snoring echoing through the gym. Nitaro stands over him, looking down at the sleeping boy with a respectful silence. The chairman looks up at the clock, noting that there is still time before they arrive. He walks over to a wall phone and begins to dial a number. He checks in with the captain, asking if they are still on schedule. Nitaro asks the captain for a small favor to slow the ship down slightly to give the boy more time to rest. The morning sun begins to rise as Lario wakes up with a loud yawn. Kurapika is also awake, looking refreshed after his short sleep. In the gym, Nitaro is already back to his morning workout routine, lifting heavy dumbbells. Gon is still sound asleep on a bench, a bandage over the bruise on his forehead. The clock shows that it is finally time for the airship to arrive. An announcement crackles over the speakers, informing everyone that they have reached their destination. The voice apologizes for the slight delay in arrival. Lario and Kurapika look out the window, shocked by what they see outside. The airship hovers next to a massive, perfectly circular stone tower. The tower sits in the middle of a vast, empty wilderness. Examinees look down at the flat top of the tower, wondering what kind of test awaits them. They all gather at the airship door, staring out at the desolate landscape of the third phase. Beans announces that they are at the top of Trick Tower, the site of the exam's third phase. He explains that the examiners have set the rules for this specific challenge. The goal is simple but daunting. They have exactly 72 hours to reach the base of Trick Tower alive. A dark, narrow corridor inside the tower stretches out before them. Hidden figures watch from the shadows, ready to begin the next deadly trial. The examinees brace themselves, knowing that the real challenge is just beginning.